Welcome back, everybody. Today I got to see the newest installment in the Evil Dead franchise, Evil Dead Rise. Out of all of the horror movies in 2023, this was the one I was the most excited for. When I heard a new Evil Dead was coming out, I was actually pretty surprised, which overall was a happy surprise. I am a solid fan of the original Evil Dead movies. They're really fun watches where I can kind of just turn my brain off and not really give a shit about what's on. It's not like they're all necessarily bad, it's just sometimes they're very campy, but also can get pretty gory and fucked up. And we have the wonderful mind of Sam Raimi to thank for that. He also helped produce this movie, along with Bruce Campbell, and I think that's pretty cool. Now, before I get into what I thought about this movie, I'd like to talk to you guys about something. Well, a few things. Number one, if you're confused to why I sound so weird right now, it's because I'm recording this in my car, and it's raining. I'm currently in a Chick-fil-A parking lot, due to the fact that I had to squeeze recording this video into some random part of some random day. Now, although I'm not sure when this video is coming out, this might be the last review I post for the next week or two. I also wanted to talk about The Mandalorian Season 3 and the fucking dumpster fire that show ended up being, but I really don't have time to at the moment. And I also didn't finish Season 3, but I'll get to it, I guess. You see, I'm going to be going on my senior trip in the next week, and I'm really not entirely sure what I'm going to be able to work on. So although I'll be uploading while I'm on the trip, I'm really not sure how many reviews I'm going to be able to get out. I'm going to try and get this video out as soon as I possibly can, but as I said, I currently have no idea when it's going to be releasing. So I hope you guys enjoy whenever this eventually comes out. So the next week, I'm going to try and upload any content I can that isn't really review-based, just because I literally can't. I'll get my review out on Mandalorian Season 3 whenever I get back, so if you're wondering why that's been pushed so far back, that's why. Now that that's all out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about this movie. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. There's not a lot of things I disliked from this movie. I had a really good time. As I said, I've been excited since the first announcement, and that very first trailer got me hooked immediately. This movie looked so genuinely scary, and I was so on board for that. And obviously, this movie delivers. This movie had some of the best scares that I've seen in a while. Just trying to do the most unsettling and disturbing shit it possibly could. The film does an excellent job at keeping you on edge throughout the entire thing. Not once does the tension stop. The Deadites are incredibly interesting horror movie antagonists because the dark magic of the Book of the Damned kind of just turns whoever it possesses into a really mean, all-powerful zombie. The people that it ends up taking over are already so far gone that they end up using anything to their advantage to get their victims to fall suit to them. And in this movie, I think they were portrayed incredibly well. Now, the first main Deadite in the movie that sets the whole plot into motion is Ellie, the sister to our other character, Beth, and the mother to the other characters in the movie. Because they're related and have, personal connections with it being their sister and mom, the Deadite version of Ellie uses those relationships to her advantage, regularly toying with our characters' emotions to get them to fall into her trap. And I think that's incredibly interesting and was so fun to watch on screen. When bad things happen, your parents are supposed to make you feel safe and comfortable. Once Ellie's transformed into a Deadite, that's the complete opposite. She is the most terrifying thing this family has to deal with from this point on, and there is no way to get her back. Something that I feel like people might not like too much, and it's something they did in the original movies too, is the Deadites like to be as mean as they possibly can be. Like, they just love to use the most profane language and say the worst things they possibly could. Now, I don't actually have a big problem with it. I know for some people it came off more comedic than scary, but I actually like it a lot. I like that even though these monsters are already trying to rip you to shreds and make you see the most disturbing shit you possibly could, they're also trying to hurt your feelings and break your soul. They are trying to do everything in their power to hurt you in every form and way they can. If that's not fucking evil, I don't know what is. There are certain lines though that do go a little bit far. Honestly, the one exception to everything I said was Ellie calling her children titty-sucking bastards. Although it completely hits the mark and it's something you would never want to say to your kids and it really upsets them, that one was just fucking funny. How do I not laugh at that? And that's not the only place this movie gets a little bit campy. The Evil Dead franchise has always balanced its horror genre elements with campy fun, and although this movie doesn't do it a lot, it definitely is there. More often than not, I give the campiness the benefit of the doubt because that's just how this series is, and there's only certain times where I was just kind of like, okay, that was fucking dumb though. Specifically just with certain lines, and guys, I shit you not, one of the kills in this movie is Deadite Ellie spitting an eyeball into a child's throat and him choking on it. That was stupid as fuck. Like, that was some cartoon shit. But I will say that was the only stupid death in the entire movie. All of the other gore and violence is probably some of the most fucked up shit I've ever seen. This movie makes you cringe with how bad it hurts our protagonists. And I'm a really big fan of that. It seems like they mixed a lot of practical effects with CGI, and everything looks phenomenal. I don't think there's a single shot in this film that looks like shit. And normally when it comes to effects in horror movies, I don't really care, but here I'm just really impressed. I would love to watch a behind the scenes video on the movie to see how they did certain things, because goddamn, a lot of that stuff was awesome. Something I wasn't surprised to enjoy as much as I did in this movie was the character dynamics. Now, when it comes to horror movies, in certain scenarios, especially like this one, where the characters are being chased around by a demonic force, it's not necessarily, necessary for the main characters to be any good, especially if they're just gonna die. But I'm glad to say that in this one, most of them are pretty interesting. There are not a lot of people we have to meet, and our main characters are pretty good ones. The only one I'm not a super big fan of is Bridget. And there's nothing really behind what I didn't like about her. In the easiest way to put it, I just thought that she was kind of annoying sometimes. I honestly just wish she got to be a more fun character to have around, or just a better character overall, because her turn to the dark side would have been so much more crushing. Her turning into a Deadite leads to some of the creepiest and coolest scenes of the entire movie. And I think it kind of sucks to say that she's more fun on screen when she's evil and trying to kill our main characters than when she's alive. Like, although it is her brother's fault that all this is happening, I wasn't expecting her to just straight up blame him. Their mother is essentially dead and has been repossessed as this crazy ass zombie demon. Why the fuck are you guys fighting right now? Being mad at him is gonna change nothing, and it clearly changed nothing, because sadly, both of them wound up dead anyway. I was actually pretty satisfied with Danny's character. The only thing that they did with him that kind of pissed me off was how he found the Book of the Damned. For all they know, an earthquake just happened, and this kid, instead of going upstairs to be with his family and be safe, jumped in a hole and raided it. Like, I don't even care about him finding the stuff and stumbling on it by accident. That honestly is completely fine to me. It's the fact that he willingly goes in a hole after an earthquake. He's just like, fuck it, yeah, that's a good idea, come on guys! And his sisters don't really go down and get him, they're just like, hey, Danny, stop it! Until he takes all the evil shit and leaves with it. Now, I do like that our characters are relatively smart and don't decide to just read the Book of the Damned. They immediately see that it's incredibly fucked up and disturbing and decide they want to get rid of it. Now, I'd think that our characters would maybe have some common sense here and not mess around with the fucking disc that also came with the Book of the Damned, but Danny, being the music head that he is, fucks around with the record anyway, and, that's how this all starts. I actually do like it, though, that the record is what ends up saying the magic spell that unleashes evil on the world, instead of our characters seeing it in a fucked up book and thinking, let's read this silly magic! I was much more satisfied with the way they did it here. And as I said, I really like that it makes sense for Danny's character. He's a kid that likes music. It makes sense that if he found a record, he'd play it. Cassie and Beth are our other family members, and they are both equally great. I like that Cassie and Danny had a really great relationship because it makes Danny's turn way more fucked up. Cassie had multiple family members die that night, but Danny's death really fucked her up. And I really like that that was clear on screen. The only thing in this movie that she did that I wasn't a huge fan of was opening the door for her crazy, blood-soaked, gray, scar-ridden mom. That bitch is not okay. Why the fuck did you let her in? I'm aware she's a child and it was fixed almost immediately, but god fucking damn, she almost made them all die faster. Beth is our other fun addition to the cast. She's the only adult left after Ellie decides to murder everybody else on their floor when they're trapped there, so she has to find a way to stop her crazy ass sister and save these kids. Although her character seems very simple, I really like the time that she had on screen. She was a badass and found very interesting solutions to figure out how to solve the scenarios that she was then trapped in. None of these characters are very complex, and honestly, that's completely fine here. The performances are good, and the characters are good. I wasn't looking forward to a lot here, but I'm glad that I got to be surprised and got more than I expected character-wise. But Ellie here is really the star of this movie. Now, I'm not very familiar with actress Alyssa Sutherland, but holy fucking shit, she is the best part of this whole movie. Genuinely one of the most terrifying and blood-curdling performances I have ever witnessed. She is scary as hell. and does not hold back. We are so lucky we got such an amazing performance from her, because goddamn, it was impressive. I'm so glad she was given so many different ways to be absolutely terrifying. 100% my favorite character from the movie, the best character to watch on screen, and my favorite Deadite from the film. She was phenomenal. Now, there really are not a lot of things in this movie that I dislike, but there is something that puzzles me just a little bit. The movie opens up with 3 characters at a cabin, one of them already being possessed and the other 2 trying to figure out what's wrong with them. From what we can tell, all 3 of these characters, either die or are turned into Deadites, for it to then say one day earlier and bring us up to date with the characters we follow throughout the whole movie. At the end, however, we finally get to see the possession of the girl from the beginning. Why the fuck was this in the film? It wasn't not cool to see, but it can be cut entirely. Now, that opening scene has some really impressive gore and effects. It's just like, it has nothing to do with the rest of the film. Saying one day earlier implies that this movie was leading up to something, and it kind of wasn't. It was leading up for it to end. The scene at the end is just so it can bring the scene at the beginning in full circle and bring that little story to a close. Why did we need it at all, is my question. It just feels a little unneeded and like it didn't really fit in the story at all. I think it would have made me more okay with this movie just kind of ending the way it did. Our 2 remaining main characters defeat the weird, nasty clump of Deadites, which don't even get me started on that fucking John Carpenter shit, because they just shred it in a fucking wood chipper. After our characters wind up killing Deadite Thing, they just kind of leave. And I was okay with that. I guess we don't have to see where these characters are going, but with it ending with them just living, I was fine. But after our characters end up leaving, we're still waiting for the setup from the beginning of the film, and it just being that random girl in a parking garage was kind of lame. Now, other than the very few things I disliked from this film, I was very impressed. This will go down as one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Evil Dead Rise was an excellent reboot to the franchise, with amazing effects, great camera work, really fun and disturbing performances, and all around, just something for everybody to enjoy from it. That is, if you're, a horror fan. If you're not and you're expecting something cute, you might be a little fucked up after. So overall, I think I'm going to give this film an 8.5 out of 10. I'm so glad I was able to watch this movie before my trip, and although I'm sad that I didn't get to see as many movies as I wanted to this April, I'm glad this was one of them. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. I have a playlist full of other movie and TV show reviews, so check the description if you're interested. As always, like, comment, and save Norbert now. Goodbye, guys. Oh, shit. Little tidbit. I would just like to say that although seeing that weird-ass John Carpenter-esque Deadite that was the random mix of fucking, 8 people into one being, although it was cool to see, it was almost incredibly ineffective. These things would have done more damage if they all just stayed one person. But instead, they all decided to become one person. Although it was gross and disturbing and really weird to look at, they would have been more effective if they just stayed the way they were. And our characters would have 100% not made it out if they just stayed the way they were. But thank God nothing like that can get me here.